Part 1 Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the massive warship called Valiant and looked out at the stars and the empty black space before him. His hands rested behind his back as he watched everything with calm eyes that had seen many battles before. The ship and its crew had been traveling through the outer edges of known space for 3 months now, doing regular patrols that had become boring and predictable. Humanity had spread across many star systems over the past 100 years, but the alien races who lived in the galaxy did not welcome them with open arms. Most aliens feared humans because Earth was known as a death world. It was a planet so dangerous and violent that only the strongest creatures could survive there. The aliens called humans Deathworlders and stayed far away from them whenever possible. Jake Morrison knew the aliens were right to be afraid. Earth was indeed a nightmare compared to most planets in the galaxy. The gravity was crushing for most species, and the weather could kill without warning. Predators hunted everywhere and diseases spread quickly. The entire planet seemed designed to test every living thing that tried to survive on its surface. Humans had climbed to the top of the food chain not because they were the biggest or strongest, but because they refused to give up. They adapted to anything and survived through pure stubborn determination. When peace did not work, humans knew how to fight, and they fought harder than any other species in the galaxy. That reputation followed them everywhere they went. The bridge was quiet except for the low hum of the engines and the soft beeping sounds from the computer systems. Lieutenant Kate Harper sat at her station watching the communication screens and checking all the channels for any signals. Ensign Ryan Cole worked at the weapons station, keeping track of the sensors that watched the space around them. Commander Lisa Grant stood next to Captain Morrison, with her arms crossed, looking as calm as always, even though everyone knew she was ready for anything. The peaceful moment ended suddenly when Kate Harper sat up straight in her chair with wide eyes. Her fingers moved quickly across the controls as she tried to understand what she was seeing. "Captain, this is strange. I'm picking up a signal. It is very weak, but it is definitely there," she said with concern in her voice. Morrison turned to look at her. "Where is it coming from?" "The signal is coming from coordinates 273 Mark 15. Distance is about 8 light years from our current position. The signal keeps breaking up, but I can see a universal distress code. It is from a Zelthian ship," Harper reported as she worked to clean up the signal. Everyone on the bridge looked at each other with surprise. The Zelthians were known throughout the galaxy as peaceful traders who never caused trouble for anyone. They were plant eaters from a planet with low gravity, and they had reached space travel through intelligence rather than violence. They built relationships and made deals instead of fighting wars. If the Zelthians were sending out a distress call, then something very bad must have happened to them. "Can you make the signal clearer so we can hear what they are saying?" Morrison asked. Harper worked at her controls for several seconds, trying to filter out the static and background noise. Finally, a voice came through the speakers, but it was broken and hard to understand. The translation computer struggled to change the alien language into words they could understand, but some phrases came through clearly enough. "Under attack by unknown enemy ships. Requesting immediate help from anyone who can hear this message. Many casualties and ship systems failing." The voice sounded desperate and afraid. Morrison felt his jaw tighten as he listened. He turned to Ryan Cole at the weapons station. "How long would it take us to reach them if we push the engines to maximum speed?" Cole typed commands into his computer and read the results. 4 hours, Captain. We would be pushing the engines very hard, but we can definitely make it there in that time." Lisa Grant moved closer to Morrison and lowered her voice so only he could hear. "Jake, we do not know what we are flying into here. This could be some kind of trap. The Zelthians are not exactly our friends. Most species in this galaxy think we are violent monsters who cannot be trusted." Morrison looked at Grant and his eyes were firm. "They are asking for help, Lisa. That is all I need to know. If we ignore this call and innocent people die, then their blood is on our hands. Set the course and alert all ships in the fleet. We are going to help them." Grant nodded and a small smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. "Yes, Captain. I will give the orders right away." The engines of the Valiant roared louder as the massive ship surged forward through space. The other ships in the fleet quickly fell into formation behind it and followed. Morrison watched as the stars seemed to stretch and blur as they accelerated to faster speeds. His mind was already thinking about what they might find when they arrived. He did not know who was attacking the Zelthians or why, but he knew one thing for certain. Whoever these attackers were, they were about to learn a very important lesson. Humans might be called Deathworlders and monsters by the rest of the galaxy, but they also had something most species lacked. They had honor, and they protected those who could not protect themselves. As the fleet raced through space toward the distant distress signal, Kate Harper continued to monitor the transmission. The signal was getting weaker, which meant the Zelthian ship was running out of power. She could hear more voices in the background now, and they were screaming in panic and fear. The sounds made her feel sick to her stomach, but she kept listening and recording everything. This information might be important later. Ryan Cole checked his weapon systems and made sure everything was ready for combat. He did not know what kind of enemy they would face, but he wanted to be prepared for anything. The tactical displays showed that all the ships in the fleet were armed and ready. If there was going to be a fight, then they would give these attackers more than they bargained for. Morrison stood perfectly, still on the bridge, watching the countdown timer that showed how much longer until they reached the Zelthian position. 4 hours seemed like an eternity when people were dying and calling for help. He hoped they would arrive in time to save at least some of the survivors. Humanity had been rejected and feared by most of the galaxy, but that did not change who they were at their core. They were protectors and defenders. They answered the call when others would not. That was what made them different, and that was what would prove to the galaxy that humans were more than just violent Deathworlders. They were also the ones who came running when someone cried out for help in the darkness of space. Part 2. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Zelthian star system, and immediately the sensors began painting a terrible picture of what had happened here. The distress signal had come from a group of civilian transport ships that were now floating dead in space with no power. Pieces of broken metal and debris surrounded the damaged vessels like a cloud of destruction. The Zelthian ships had been torn apart by weapons fire, and it was clear they never had a chance to fight back. But what caught Captain Morrison's attention were the 6 strange ships that were still here, circling the wreckage like predators. "Captain, I am reading 6 unknown vessels near the Zelthian ships," Cole reported from his station while studying the sensor data carefully. "They do not match anything in our database. The configuration suggests they have very heavy weapons. They are holding position and do not seem to be leaving." Morrison leaned forward and studied the tactical display screen that showed the positions of all the ships. The alien vessels looked dangerous, with dark gray hulls that seemed to absorb the light from nearby stars. Their energy readings showed they had powerful weapon systems, and their movements were precise and calculated like hunters tracking prey. Harper tried sending them a message. "Use the universal greeting protocols that we use for first contact situations," Morrison ordered. Harper transmitted the standard message, which was a series of mathematical patterns and symbols that expressed peaceful intentions. This method had become the accepted way to communicate with unknown species when meeting them for the first time. For a long moment there was no response from the alien ships. Then slowly all 6 vessels began to turn in perfect coordination. Their weapon systems rotated to point directly at the human fleet. "They are locking weapons onto us," Cole shouted with alarm in his voice. "Energy readings are spiking across all 6 ships. They are charging their weapons to fire." Morrison's voice remained calm even though everyone could feel the tension rising on the bridge. "All ships move into defensive formation. Raise shields to maximum power. Harper, keep transmitting our message. Let them know we are not here to attack them." The response from the alien ships came not with words but with violence. Bright red beams of deadly energy shot out from their weapons and slammed into the shields protecting the human ships. The Valiant shook hard from the impact, and alarms started blaring throughout the bridge. The shield strength dropped by 15% from just that first attack. "Return fire immediately," Morrison commanded with steel in his voice. "Target their weapon systems. Show them they made a big mistake attacking us." The human fleet responded with devastating firepower that was uniquely designed by a species that had survived on a death world. Railguns fired metal projectiles at speeds so fast they could punch through almost anything. Missiles launched in swarms, with each one guided by advanced computers. Energy weapons carved bright trails through the darkness of space. The aliens had expected to find easy victims like the Zelthians, but instead they got a coordinated attack that would have destroyed any other species in the galaxy. But these attackers were not ordinary enemies. Their ships moved through the incoming fire with incredible speed and agility. Their shields absorbed hits that should have crippled them completely. They fired back with precise shots that targeted the weak points on the human ships with accuracy that suggested they had fought many battles before. One of the human frigates took a direct hit to its engine section and began spinning out of control while venting air into space. "They are very good at this," Grant said quietly while watching the tactical display. "Too good. This is not their first battle." Morrison gritted his teeth in frustration. "Cole, I need you to analyze their attack patterns. Find me a weakness in their defenses." Harper sent a message to any Zelthian survivors. "Tell them help has arrived and we are not leaving." While the battle continued to rage around them, Cole worked frantically at his station. His fingers moved across the controls at lightning speed as he studied the data from the enemy ships. After a tense minute, he looked up with excitement in his eyes. "Captain, I found something important. Their shield systems go through a cycle every 12 seconds. There is a brief window where their defenses drop by 30%. If we can time our shots perfectly, we can break through their shields." Morrison smiled grimly and felt hope return. "Send that information to all ships in the fleet immediately. We will coordinate a synchronized strike. Everyone fire on my command only." The human ships adjusted their attack patterns and held their fire while waiting for the exact moment that Cole had identified in the enemy shield cycles. The seconds seemed to stretch forever as everyone waited with weapons charged and ready. When Morrison gave the order, the entire fleet unleashed everything they had at once. Railgun rounds punched through the weakened shields and tore into the alien hulls beneath. Missiles found their targets and exploded in massive fireballs. One alien vessel disappeared in a chain reaction of explosions as its reactor core was breached and released all its energy at once. The remaining enemy ships suddenly seemed uncertain, and their tight formation began to fall apart. For the first time since the battle started, they looked like they did not know what to do next. Then, without any warning, they disengaged from the fight. Their engines flared bright as they accelerated away from the battlefield at high speed. Within seconds, they had vanished into faster-than-light travel, leaving the humans alone with the wreckage and the damaged Zelthian ships. Morrison let out a long, slow breath that he did not realize he had been holding. "Give me a damage report." Grant checked her display screen and read the information. "The frigate Defender is heavily damaged, but the crew has stabilized it. 2 other ships report minor hull breaches that are being repaired. We have some injuries, but no deaths." "That is good news," Morrison said with relief. "Harper, open a communication channel to the Zelthian ships. Let us see who we just saved." Harper worked her controls and established a connection. After a moment, a weak voice came through the speakers speaking in the Zelthian language. The translation computer rendered the words, "This is Coordinator Valen of the transport vessel. We thank you for your intervention. We did not expect anyone to answer our call, especially not humans." Morrison felt a strange mix of emotions at those words. The Zelthians had called for help not expecting anyone to come, and certainly not the humans who were feared throughout the galaxy. But humans had come anyway because it was the right thing to do. "We are sending a shuttle to your ship, Coordinator Valen. We need to know what happened here and who attacked you. Stand by for boarding." As the shuttle was prepared, Morrison looked out at the debris field and the damaged ships floating in space. Whoever these attackers were, they had done terrible damage, and then fled when they faced real resistance. That meant they were not invincible. They could be beaten, but it also meant they would probably attack again somewhere else and more innocent beings would die unless someone stopped them. Morrison made a decision in that moment. If the galaxy would not protect its weakest members, then humanity would do it instead. Part 3, the Zelthian transport ship looked like it had been through hell as Captain Morrison and his team stepped aboard through the airlock. The walls were scorched black from fires and the metal floor was covered with debris. Emergency lights flickered on and off, casting strange shadows everywhere. The air smelled like burnt wires and smoke. Morrison removed his helmet and breathed carefully as he led Commander Grant and a security team through the damaged corridors. Their boots made loud clanging sounds on the metal deck with each step. They found the survivors huddled together in what remained of the cargo bay at the center of the ship. About 20 Zelthians sat wrapped in thermal blankets that were meant to keep them warm. Their large eyes that normally glowed with soft light now looked dull and filled with fear. Among them stood one Zelthian who was clearly injured but still trying to maintain some dignity, despite the terrible situation. He stepped forward slowly and his translator device converted his words into language the humans could understand. "I am Coordinator Valen," he said in a voice that sounded tired and sad. "We did not expect anyone to answer our call for help. We certainly did not expect humans to come. Your species has a reputation throughout the galaxy. Morrison looked at Valen with steady eyes that showed both strength and compassion. I am Captain Jake Morrison of the Terran Defense Fleet. We received your distress signal and came as fast as we could. Tell me what happened here. Who attacked you and why? Valen's eyes looked down at the floor and his whole body seemed to sag with grief. We were transporting refugees from our colony on Zelthos Prime. The planet was destroyed 3 weeks ago. We thought we had escaped. We thought we were finally safe. But they followed us across space. They are called the Kravik, and they do not stop hunting once they choose a target. The Kravik. Grant repeated the name slowly. We have never heard of them before. They are not in any of our databases. Valen's translator could not hide the pain in his voice. They are conquerors who only know how to destroy. They came from beyond the outer reach, which is a region of space we always believed was empty and uninhabited. They do not negotiate with anyone. They do not take prisoners or make deals. They simply eradicate everything in their path. Zelthos Prime had a population of 12 million beings. Now the planet is nothing but ash and radioactive ruins where nothing can live. The weight of those words hung in the air like a heavy blanket. Morrison exchanged a look with Grant and he could see she was just as troubled as he was. Genocide on such a massive scale was something humanity had hoped belonged only to their own dark history. It was horrifying to discover that such evil still existed among the stars. Why did you not send a warning to the other species in the galaxy? Morrison asked. Why did you wait until now to call for help? Valen's shoulders dropped even more. We tried to warn them, Captain. We sent messages to the Galactic Council explaining what happened and begging them to investigate. They refused to believe us. They said we were exaggerating the threat. They claimed it was just a local conflict that did not concern them. They would not commit any resources to help us. We are a minor species in their eyes. We are expendable and not worth protecting. Morrison felt anger rising in his chest. The Galactic Council was supposed to protect all species, but they had always treated the smaller civilizations as insignificant. They preached about peace and cooperation, but their actions showed they only cared about maintaining their own power. Humanity had experienced their arrogance before, and Morrison had no love for them. So you sent out a general distress call hoping someone would hear it. Morrison said, understanding the desperate situation, and we happened to be close enough to respond. Valen looked up at Morrison with something that might have been hope in his large eyes. Yes. We did not know if anyone would come. We certainly did not expect the Deathworlders to help us. Your species has such a terrible reputation. Everyone says you are violent and dangerous and unpredictable. But you came anyway. You saved us when no one else would. I do not understand why, but I am grateful. Morrison crouched down so he could look directly into Valen's eyes at the same level. I know what the galaxy says about us. They call us monsters and barbarians. They fear us because we come from a world that tried to kill us every single day. But that same world taught us something important. It taught us to protect those who cannot protect themselves. We do not abandon people who need help. That is not who we are. Valen stared at Morrison for a long moment as if trying to understand this human who defied everything he had been told about the species. Finally, he nodded slowly. You saved our lives when you had no reason to do so. For that you have earned my eternal gratitude and the gratitude of my people. Grant stepped forward and spoke in a firm voice. We need to know everything you can tell us about the Kravik, their tactics and their technology and their numbers. If they are as dangerous as you say, then the entire galaxy needs to know about this threat. Valen's expression became dark and haunted by memories. They are relentless in their attacks. Their ships are more advanced than anything we have ever seen. Their weapons are incredibly powerful. They attack in coordinated waves that overwhelm any defense before you can react. And they never stop. Once they mark a target for destruction, they pursue it across the stars until nothing remains. Morrison stood up and his mind was already forming plans. Then we need to be ready for them. Grant arranged for all the survivors to be transported to the Valiant immediately. Make sure they have medical care and food and safe quarters. Valen, I want you and your people to be safe while we figure out what to do next. After that, we are taking this information to the Council, whether they want to hear it or not. Valen's eyes widened with surprise. You would do this. You would risk making the Council angry for the sake of strangers you just met. Morrison's smile was cold and determined. Let them be angry. If they refuse to protect innocent beings, then we will do it ourselves. The council has forgotten what it means to stand up for what is right. Maybe it is time someone reminded them. As the human team began organizing the evacuation of the Zelthian survivors, Valen watched them work with something close to wonder. He had been taught his entire life that humans were monsters to be feared. But these monsters had crossed the galaxy to save his people when no one else would. Perhaps the galaxy had been wrong about the Deathworlders. Perhaps there was more to humanity than violence and aggression. Perhaps they were exactly what the galaxy needed, even if it did not realize it yet. Part 4, the Galactic Council Chamber, was designed to impress and intimidate anyone who entered it. The massive circular hall had walls made of crystal that reflected the light from distant stars, creating patterns of color across the floor. Representatives from dozens of different alien species occupied floating platforms that moved in slow circles around the central area where the ruling council members sat in their elevated positions of power. This was where the most important decisions affecting trillions of beings were supposedly made. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the center of the chamber with his back straight and his uniform perfectly pressed. Commander Lisa Grant and Lieutenant Kate Harper stood on either side of him, looking equally determined. Behind them, a large holographic display showed footage from the attack on the Zelthian convoy. The images of destruction and death played over and over, showing exactly what the Kravik had done. But the council members sitting high above barely seemed to notice or care. Captain Morrison, the High Arbiter named Xylox, spoke in a voice that sounded annoyed. The tall insect-like being clicked his mandibles together in what Morrison had learned was a dismissive gesture. You stand before this council without permission or invitation. You demand our attention and claim this is a matter of great importance to the entire galaxy. Explain yourself quickly. Morrison gestured toward the holographic display that showed the destroyed Zelthian ships and the attack footage. The evidence is right there for you to see. A species that calls itself the Kravik attacked and completely destroyed a Zelthian colony world. 12 million innocent beings were killed. They hunted down the survivors and would have finished killing them all if my fleet had not intervened. This is not some small local conflict. This is an existential threat to every species in this galaxy. A wave of murmuring spread through the chamber as the various representatives whispered among themselves. One of the council members, named Ambassador Selrin, who lived in a tank of water, leaned forward. His voice came through a speaker with a gurgling quality. You expect us to believe the word of humans? Your species has barely been traveling in space for 100 years. You are known throughout the galaxy for exaggeration and violence. Perhaps this Kravik threat is just something you invented to justify your aggressive military actions. Morrison felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his voice level and calm. We have survivors who witnessed everything. We have detailed recordings from the battle. We fought the Kravik ourselves and barely survived. If you do not believe me, then ask the Zelthians who are currently safe aboard my ship. High Arbiter Xylox made that clicking sound again. The Zelthians are a minor species with little influence. Their testimony alone is not sufficient to convince this council. We require confirmation from more established civilizations before we will consider taking action. Until we receive credible evidence from reliable sources, we see no reason to waste valuable resources investigating unverified claims. Grant stepped forward, and her voice was sharp with frustration. Unverified claims. We just showed you footage of the attack. We engaged hostile forces that nearly destroyed one of our ships. Exactly how much more evidence do you need before you take this seriously? Another council member named Counselor Dravik, who resembled a large reptile, spoke up. His tongue flicked out as he talked. Perhaps the humans provoked this attack themselves. Your species has a well-documented history of starting conflicts. It seems far more likely that this situation resulted from human aggression, rather than an unprovoked assault by an unknown faction we have never heard of. Morrison felt his temper rising, but forced himself to stay calm. We responded to a distress call. We saved innocent lives, and now we are warning you that there is a dangerous threat out there that will not stop with the Zelthians. If you ignore this warning, you will be responsible when countless more beings die. The High Arbiter's voice became final and absolute. This council has carefully considered your claims. We find no compelling reason to take action at this time. If the Kravik truly exist and truly pose a threat, they will eventually reveal themselves through actions we cannot ignore. Until that time, humanity is strongly advised to stop interfering in galactic affairs that do not concern you. This session is now concluded. Morrison stared at the council members in disbelief. Around the chamber, The various representatives were already turning their attention to other matters as if 12 million deaths meant absolutely nothing to them. They were dismissing the genocide of an entire civilization as if it were just another bureaucratic problem that could be filed away and forgotten. He turned to Grant and his voice was low and dangerous. They are fools who will get millions more killed through their inaction. Grant nodded with a grim expression. What do we do now, Captain? Morrison's eyes were hard as steel. We do what we have always done. We protect innocent beings regardless of what the Council says. Get me a direct communication line to Earth Command. If the Council refuses to act, then humanity will handle this ourselves. As they walked out of the Council chamber, Harper moved closer to Grant and spoke quietly. Do you think our government will support us in this? Going against the Council could have serious political consequences. Grant's smile was cold. Humanity did not become what we are by backing down from bullies, and the Council just made a very serious mistake by dismissing us like we do not matter. They are about to learn that humans do not ask permission to do what is right. They boarded their shuttle and began the trip back to the fleet. Morrison sat in silence thinking about everything that had happened. The Council had chosen politics over lives. They had decided that maintaining their comfortable status was more important than protecting innocent beings from genocide. It made him sick, but it also made him more determined. Humanity had survived on a death world by refusing to give up no matter how impossible the odds seemed. They had faced extinction dozens of times in their history and fought their way through each crisis. The Council thought humans were violent monsters, but they had no idea what humanity was truly capable of when defending the innocent. When they arrived back on the valiant Morrison, immediately went to his quarters and opened a secure communication channel directly to Earth. Within minutes, he was speaking to Admiral Frank Peterson, who commanded all human military forces. Morrison explained everything that had happened and everything the Council had said. There was a long silence after he finished his report. Finally, Admiral Peterson spoke. The Council has made their position clear. They will not help, but that does not mean we will stand by and let this continue. I am authorizing you to take whatever action you deem necessary. Reinforcements are already being prepared. We will send every available ship to support you. If the galaxy will not protect its people, then humanity will show them how it should be done. Morrison felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Thank you, Admiral. We will not let you down. As the communication ended, Morrison looked out at the stars and made a silent promise. The Kravik thought they could destroy entire civilizations without consequence. The Council thought they could ignore genocide and maintain their comfortable lives. Both of them were about to learn a hard lesson. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage and they were not going away. The Deathworlders were going to remind the galaxy what it meant to fight for something bigger than yourself. Part 5. 3 weeks passed after the Council refused to help, and during that time the Kravik struck again. Their target was a peaceful mining colony belonging to the Veltharian species, who were silicon-based life forms that had never harmed anyone. The Veltharians had no weapons and no military, because they believed violence was never the answer to any problem. That belief cost them everything when the Kravik arrived. Within 6 hours the colony was destroyed and the population was slaughtered. A handful of survivors managed to escape in damaged ships, and they sent desperate messages begging anyone in the galaxy to help them. The Galactic Council remained silent and did nothing. But humanity was listening. The Terran Defense Fleet assembled at the edge of the Veltharian home system, and it was an impressive sight. Ships had come from every human-controlled sector of space. Massive dreadnoughts bristled with enough weapons to level entire cities. Carriers launched wave after wave of small fighter craft. Cruisers and destroyers formed protective screens around the larger vessels. At the center of this armada was the Valiant with Captain Jake Morrison, standing on the bridge watching the tactical displays with focused intensity. Give me a full tactical report, Morrison ordered. Ryan Cole studied his screens carefully before responding. Kravik fleet detected in orbit around the Veltharian homeworld. Count is 24 capital ships plus numerous support vessels. They are conducting orbital bombardment and destroying everything on the surface. The planet will be completely dead within hours if we do not stop them. Lisa Grant moved to stand beside Morrison, and her face showed the same grim determination he felt. They are trying to finish what they started. If we do not act immediately, there will be nothing left to save. Morrison's voice was steady and calm despite the gravity of the situation. All ships assume battle formation. Cole, transmit the following message to the Kravik fleet on every available channel. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Terran Defense Fleet. You are ordered to cease your attack immediately and withdraw from this system. Failure to comply will result in your complete destruction. Kate Harper transmitted the message, and then everyone waited to see how the Kravik would respond. For several tense seconds, there was only silence. Then the Kravik fleet began to move. Every single ship turned away from the planet and oriented toward the human fleet. Their weapon systems came online and began charging for combat. They are not backing down, Captain, Cole reported. Energy readings are spiking across their entire fleet. They are preparing to engage us in battle. Morrison's smile was cold and dangerous. Good. It is time to show them why attacking innocent beings was the worst mistake they ever made. All ships prepare to fire. Let us remind the galaxy what happens when you threaten the defenseless. The Terran fleet opened fire with everything they had. The sheer volume of firepower unleashed in that moment was staggering. Railguns fired solid metal projectiles at speeds approaching the speed of light. Each round carried enough kinetic energy to punch through meters of armor plating. Missiles streaked through space by the thousands, with each one guided by sophisticated targeting computers. Energy weapons carved brilliant lines of destruction through the darkness. The Kravik had expected to face another weak species like the Zelthians and Veltharians. Instead, they faced the military might of a species forged in the fires of a death world. The Kravik fought back with their advanced technology and deadly precision. Their weapons fired beams of energy that could slice through ship hulls like paper. A human cruiser exploded in a massive fireball, killing everyone aboard in an instant. Another ship lost its engines and began drifting helplessly through the battlefield. But for every human ship that fell, 2 Kravik vessels were destroyed. The difference was not in technology or numbers, but in the human ability to adapt and overcome any obstacle. Humanity had learned to survive on a planet that tried to kill them every day, and that experience had made them into the most dangerous warriors the galaxy had ever seen. Morrison watched the battle unfold on the tactical displays and made rapid calculations in his mind. Cole focused all available firepower on their command ship. If we take out their leadership, the rest will fall apart. Cole acknowledged the order and transmitted new targeting data to the entire fleet. Every human ship adjusted its aim to focus on the largest Kravik vessel, which was easily twice the size of the Valiant. Railgun rounds hammered into its shields, causing them to flicker and weaken. Missiles exploded against the failing defenses in rapid succession. Finally, a concentrated energy beam from the Valiant itself punched through the weakened shields and struck the reactor core deep inside the enemy ship. The resulting explosion was spectacular. The Kravik command ship tore itself apart from the inside as its reactor went critical. The shockwave from the detonation damaged several nearby Kravik vessels and sent debris flying in all directions. For a brief moment, the entire Kravik fleet seemed to freeze, as if they could not believe what had just happened. Then their formation broke apart completely. The remaining ships turned and fled at maximum speed toward the edge of the system, where they could jump to faster-than-light travel. The Terran fleet held position and watched as the last enemy vessel vanished into the darkness. Morrison finally allowed himself to relax slightly as the immediate danger passed. "Give me a status report on all ships." Grant consulted her displays, and her voice was heavy with the weight of their losses. "We lost 3 ships completely. 7 more are heavily damaged and will need extensive repairs. Casualties are significant, but we achieved our objective. The Veltharian homeworld is safe." Harper's voice was soft and emotional. "Captain, we are receiving multiple transmissions from the Veltharian government. They are thanking us. They are calling us saviors and heroes." Morrison nodded slowly. "Acknowledge their gratitude. Let them know that humanity will always stand ready to defend those who cannot defend themselves. That is our promise to the galaxy." As the fleet began rescue and recovery operations, Grant turned to Morrison with a slight smile. "The Council is going to be absolutely furious when they learn what we did here today." Morrison's grin was fierce and proud. "Let them be angry. We did not ask for their permission, and we do not need their approval. Humanity has always fought for what is right even when everyone else turned away. That will never change no matter what the Council thinks of us. In the days and weeks that followed, news of the battle spread across the entire galaxy, faster than light itself. The Kravik had been defeated and driven back to the dark reaches of space they came from. Their advance had been stopped by a species most of the galaxy still feared and misunderstood. The smaller civilizations who had been ignored by the Council began to speak up and demand change. And humanity, the so-called Deathworlders, became something unexpected. They became protectors and defenders of the innocent. The galaxy learned an important lesson that day. Humanity might have been born on a world of violence and death, but that crucible had forged them into something remarkable. They possessed not just strength and ferocity, but also compassion and honor. When others called out for help in their darkest hour, humanity answered without hesitation. They crossed the stars to save beings they had never met and expected nothing in return. That was what made them different. That was what made them special. The Deathworlders had shown the galaxy what it meant to be truly civilized, and the galaxy would remember it forever.